Ethan, a 32-year-old American, is exhausted from unsuccessful attempts to find a true relationship. One day, he decides to try a dating site. He creates a profile, and after days of shallow conversations, one message catches his eye. Miguel, a 28-year-old Latino with a mysterious photo and intense gaze, intrigues him. Their conversation flows naturally and is exciting. They share dreams and ambitions, and the connection is almost immediate. As time goes by, their online conversations grow deeper and both begin sharing personal stories. Miguel talks about his lifelong dream of moving to the U.S., while Ethan confesses he's looking for someone special to share his life with. Days pass, and the connection strengthens. Ethan starts to imagine what it would be like to have Miguel beside him in real life. They discuss a possible meeting, but the uncertainties and distance make them hesitate. After weeks of chatting, Miguel mentions he's willing to travel to the U.S. to meet Ethan in person. Ethan is thrilled and nervous. He feels he's found someone who genuinely understands him. The anticipation builds, and they set a date for Miguel's arrival. The countdown begins, and Ethan starts preparing for Miguel's arrival. As the days pass, Ethan shares details about his life with Miguel, including childhood stories, work challenges, and the complicated relationship with his family. Miguel, in turn, opens up about his culture, his roots, and the hardships of living in a country with limited opportunities. Each conversation deepens their bond, and Ethan begins to believe this relationship has the potential to last. Finally, the day of Miguel's trip arrives. Ethan goes to the airport, nervous, wondering if their online chemistry will translate in person. When Miguel steps through the arrival gate, their eyes meet, and they smile, feeling that the virtual connection was just the start of something deeper. The anticipation takes over as they leave the airport together. Ethan and Miguel begin living together, and the first few days are intense and emotional. Everything seems perfect, but soon they notice their cultural and personality differences. Ethan is methodical and organized, while Miguel is more spontaneous and full of energy. At first, these differences are charming, but small frustrations begin to arise. Their cultural backgrounds also come to light. Miguel tries to bring his customs into their new life in the U.S., but Ethan sometimes feels uncomfortable. Ethan introduces Miguel to his American friends, but he notices Miguel feeling out of place. They start to have conversations about how each of them sees the world, trying to adapt to each other's quirks. As they live together, Ethan realizes his family doesn't approve of the relationship. His parents suspect that Miguel might be interested in him only for the opportunity to move to America, and tension grows every time they meet. Miguel senses the distrust and subtle comments, leaving him frustrated and angry. Ethan finds himself torn between love for Miguel and loyalty to his family. Miguel tries to prove to Ethan that he's there for love, but the shadow of Ethan's family's distrust begins to affect their relationship. Ethan reassures Miguel that his family will come around eventually, but the situation only worsens. Their conversations become strained, and Miguel begins to wonder if moving was the right decision. Despite the tensions, they continue trying to make things work. Ethan starts embracing Miguel's culture more, trying to find a balance. During intimate moments, they forget the conflicts and remember what brought them together in the first place. But the differences remain, always looming, threatening the harmony of their relationship. Ethan and Miguel's relationship experiences ups and downs. Miguel begins feeling homesick and misses the people he cared about. Ethan notices Miguel's distance but tries to avoid confrontation, fearing it will drive them further apart. Meanwhile, Miguel feels that Ethan doesn't fully understand his struggles. Ethan starts noticing Miguel's change in behavior and feels insecure about his partner's feelings. He tries to compensate by planning romantic gestures and giving small gifts, but Miguel seems increasingly distant. Ethan begins questioning whether moving in together was premature, and their discussions about the future grow tense. One evening, they have an honest talk, and Miguel admits he's going through emotional challenges but still wants to be with Ethan. He explains that adjusting to a new life is difficult, but Ethan suspects Miguel is hiding something deeper. Doubts start to creep in, but Ethan tries to stay calm and keep his trust. The tension builds when Ethan discovers Miguel has been confiding in friends from his hometown, talking about his frustrations. Ethan feels betrayed and questions whether Miguel genuinely wants to be with him or is just looking for a better life. Miguel, feeling attacked, responds that Ethan doesn't understand the complexity of his feelings. Despite the conflicts, Ethan tries to overcome his insecurities and suggests they take a trip together to reconnect. Miguel hesitates, but eventually agrees, and they set off in hopes of renewing their relationship. However, the tension lingers, and neither is completely sure about what the future holds. The trip begins with excitement, both hoping this time together will help them overcome recent tensions. They choose a small coastal town, spending days exploring beaches and nights talking under the stars. For a brief moment, everything feels harmonious, and they remember the connection that brought them together. However, during a romantic dinner, a conversation reignites their tensions. Ethan questions why Miguel keeps constant contact with people from his hometown, implying he's not fully committed to building a life with him. Feeling misunderstood, Miguel defends himself, saying he needs his roots to keep himself balanced. The night ends with both withdrawing, frustrated by the lack of mutual understanding. Nevertheless, Miguel tries to show Ethan his love is real, but Ethan, already shaken by mistrust, starts questioning Miguel's loyalty. The trip, which was supposed to strengthen their bond, only heightens their uncertainties. Still, they decide to give reconciliation one more shot. The last few days of the trip are marked by silence, but also a melancholic closeness, as if they both know their relationship is hanging by a thread. Miguel promises to work harder to make Ethan feel secure, but Ethan can't shake the doubts. When they return home, they realize the trip didn't bring the change they hoped for, but they decide to keep trying, hoping that time will help them rebuild their shaken trust. Despite the tension, there's a quiet hope that love might still triumph over adversity. Back in their routine, Ethan and Miguel's relationship grows increasingly fragile. One day, Ethan discovers suspicious messages on Miguel's phone exchanged with an old friend from his hometown. The messages are vague, but carry a tone that makes Ethan uncomfortable. He confronts Miguel, who defends himself, claiming it's just a friendship. The argument escalates, and Ethan questions whether Miguel truly loves him or is just with him for personal gain. Offended, Miguel storms out and spends the night away, leaving Ethan worried and frustrated. Deep down, he fears Miguel is hiding something more serious. Over the next few days, Miguel remains distant and evasive. Ethan starts digging deeper, looking for any signs of betrayal. His insecurity drives him to search through Miguel's social media, desperately seeking answers, which only fuels his mistrust and despair. Miguel finally admits he was seeking advice from friends about his issues with Ethan, but denies any romantic involvement. Even so, Ethan can't fully trust him. The mistrust becomes a heavy burden, and they live in constant tension, trapped in a relationship that seems ready to crumble. Despite everything, Miguel makes an effort to win back Ethan's trust, proposing new goals for their relationship. Ethan reluctantly agrees, but emotional wounds have already been inflicted. This first betrayal of trust has left a deep scar, difficult to erase. As they try to rebuild their relationship, Ethan realizes his family is increasingly against Miguel. During a family dinner, subtle comments about Miguel's background and intentions make the atmosphere tense. Miguel feels humiliated, and Ethan is torn between family support and loyalty to his boyfriend. After dinner, Miguel confronts Ethan, saying he's tired of being treated with suspicion. Ethan tries to explain that it's hard to break family ties, but Miguel insists he has to choose between the relationship and family acceptance. The situation becomes unbearable, and both feel something must change for their love to survive. Desperate to save the relationship, Ethan tries to show his family that Miguel is a genuine partner, but resistance remains. He realizes his parents are unwilling to accept Miguel, and frustration grows. Miguel, meanwhile, feels isolated and starts questioning if he should stay with Ethan. Despite the conflicts, Ethan still believes their love can overcome adversity. He tries to convince Miguel not to give up, but Miguel is already emotionally drained. The distance between them widens, and they live in constant conflict, caught between love and a reality threatening to pull them apart. The tension rises, and they frequently argue about the possibility of a future together. Miguel feels increasingly out of place, while Ethan feels trapped between family and love. The pressure is immense, and the relationship seems on the verge of collapse. As Ethan tries to save the relationship, Miguel starts spending more time away from home, saying he needs space. Ethan, growing more suspicious, begins to believe Miguel has a new romantic interest. Doubts consume him, and he feels powerless, unable to stop Miguel's possible drift away. One day, Ethan decides to follow Miguel and discovers he's meeting someone else. Although he's not certain of what's happening, the sight is enough to devastate him. Ethan confronts Miguel, who admits he's gotten close to another man but insists it's only a friendship. Feeling betrayed, Ethan demands that Miguel decide on their relationship. Miguel hesitates but promises to distance himself from the other person. However, trust is already broken, and Ethan feels incapable of believing Miguel's words. Miguel tries to win Ethan back, but resentment makes reconciliation difficult. Ethan, filled with hurt, begins to emotionally withdraw, while Miguel realizes their relationship is nearing its end. Despite their efforts, they both know the love they once shared is only a distant memory wrapped in pain and disappointment. The situation reaches a breaking point, and they live like strangers, with neither trust nor harmony. The love that once united them is now just a distant memory, wrapped in pain and disappointment. As their relationship crumbles, Miguel finds himself increasingly detached. Days blend into one another as he spends more time outside, meeting new people and entertaining the idea of a life without Ethan. He's exhausted from the constant arguments, cultural misunderstandings, and lack of acceptance from Ethan's family. Each day, the strain of trying to make their relationship work feels heavier, and he begins to wonder if he's sacrificing too much of himself in the process. At first, he tells himself that he just needs space, but soon he realizes he's contemplating something bigger, a permanent separation. Secretly, he reconnects with old friends online, reaching out for advice and support. One particular friend, Carlos, listens sympathetically, encouraging Miguel to think about his happiness and suggesting that sometimes letting go is the best way forward. With each conversation, Miguel's desire for a fresh start intensifies. Meanwhile, Ethan senses Miguel's growing emotional distance. He notices how Miguel's expressions have changed, more cold, indifferent, and distracted. Ethan tries to ignore his fears, thinking that maybe this is just a rough patch. But one night, while Miguel is out, Ethan finds himself alone with his thoughts, realizing that things have changed irreversibly. No amount of love, it seems, can cover the widening gap between them. In an attempt to restore some connection, Ethan suggests they revisit the reasons they fell in love, hoping to reignite the spark that has all but faded. Yet Miguel shrugs it off, showing little interest, and Ethan's heart sinks. The next few days pass with Miguel quietly making plans. He's decided to leave without a word, fearing a confrontation that might stir up emotions he's trying to suppress. Late at night, after Ethan falls asleep, Miguel begins packing his belongings into a suitcase he's hidden in the closet. He carefully chooses what to take, trying to leave as little evidence as possible. With each item packed, Miguel feels a sense of liberation, but also a pang of guilt. He knows he's leaving Ethan with no closure, but he convinces himself this is the best choice. On his final night, Miguel takes one last look around their shared space. Memories flood his mind. The laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams they once shared. Despite everything, there's a lingering sorrow, a hint of what could have been. But the bitterness of recent arguments and the feeling of isolation he's felt overpowers his sentimentality. Quietly, he closes the door behind him, leaving Ethan and their shared life for what he believes will be a better future. Ethan wakes up the next morning to an unsettling silence. Miguel's side of the bed is cold, untouched. Initially, Ethan thinks Miguel may have left early, maybe to clear his mind. But as minutes pass, a feeling of unease gnaws at him. He calls out, but there's no response. His voice echoes in the empty apartment, and dread begins to settle in. When he checks their bedroom, Ethan's heart sinks as he notices the empty drawers and closet space. Miguel's clothes, personal items, even the smallest belongings have disappeared. Realizing the truth, Ethan feels a wave of disbelief. It's not just that Miguel left. He's gone without any warning, without even a goodbye. Desperation takes hold as Ethan frantically searches the apartment for a note, a message, anything that could explain Miguel's abrupt departure. In a daze, he stumbles into his office and opens his laptop, intending to clear his mind by checking emails. But as he logs into his bank account, his heart stops. Large withdrawals have drained most of his savings, his investments and personal accounts, all heavily impacted. Miguel didn't just leave. He took everything he could, emptying accounts Ethan had trusted him with. It's as though his world has come crashing down piece by piece. The shock quickly transforms into a crushing betrayal. How could Miguel, someone he loved and trusted deeply, do something so heartless? He stares at the screen in disbelief, feeling a mixture of anger, sorrow, and humiliation. The reality sinks in. Miguel not only left but robbed him of nearly everything. Ethan clutches his head in disbelief, sinking into his chair as the weight of the betrayal becomes unbearable. the next few days are a blur of sorrow and disbelief. Friends and family reach out, hearing about the incident. Some offer condolences, while others ask questions, unable to hide their shock at the depth of Miguel's deception. Ethan feels the sting of shame, knowing people are whispering about his misfortune, questioning how he allowed himself to be so vulnerable. Ethan revisits every memory, every conversation, trying to pinpoint where he went wrong. The laughter, the tender moments, they feel tainted now, overshadowed by Miguel's deceit. He spends hours alone, replaying the past, tormented by the idea that their entire relationship was a facade. He wonders if Miguel had ever truly loved him, or if he was just a stepping stone in Miguel's plan all along. Despite the emotional devastation, Ethan makes a decision. He won't let this betrayal define him. He reaches out to his bank, a lawyer, and close friends who support him through the aftermath. Slowly, he begins taking steps to rebuild his life, determined to reclaim his sense of self and independence. The road ahead seems long, but he refuses to let Miguel's betrayal rob him of the future he still dreams of. As days pass, Ethan's sorrow shifts to a quiet resolve. Though he knows it will take time, he is determined to heal. He takes comfort in small victories, reconnecting with supportive friends, rediscovering his hobbies, and setting new financial goals. Ethan realizes he's more resilient than he thought, and that he can, eventually, find happiness again, even if it takes time. In his final reflection, Ethan acknowledges that he may never fully understand why Miguel did what he did, but he knows this experience, painful as it is, has made him stronger.